OPT model. What does that mean? Training. Good. So, good job. But what is it like? Why is it put together? No, that's what I wanted, but I also want why do we have it? And how is it helpful? Yeah, it's a good way to categorize your clients that are coming in, right? And to work with them. And so what's that first phase, phase one? Where do you think you're going to be spending most of your time? What's that? Yep, stabilization. Yeah, most people need that. Why do most people need that focus on stability, phase one? Muscle imbalances. Okay, great. So describe that. What's in a muscle imbalance? Where does it come from, and how can you determine it's there?
Muscle imbalance, overactive and underactive muscles.
Okay.
One muscle will use more, one get lengthened, one get shortened.
Right. So with every joint, you got muscles on one side, muscles on the other. Allow you to go forward, allow you to go back, right? So muscle imbalance, one side's a little more active than the other side. And what promotes that, or how do those get there? Postural deviations, yeah, over time, yeah, injuries, yeah, we can do that. So good, you told me about what they are, where do they come from, and how do we recognize them? Assessments, very good. So what are some assessments that you do to determine those, that point those out? Overhead squat? Yeah. Yep, all those movement, human movement assessments. And what about posture, or just looking at somebody, how they do things? You getting good at telling if somebody's a little forward head, other things like that, shoulders are forward, pelvis is tipped a little bit, okay? Yeah, like I said, you're kind of cursed for life because you're always going to recognize those. But that's important. And how do those get there? What are people doing to promote that? Lots of sitting. Modern day conveniences allow us to sit a lot. We sit down for breakfast, then we go sit in our car. What are we doing in our car? We're doing this, and we get to work and we're sitting down, we're doing that. So yeah, these things come forward. The body's real efficient. So when we talk about those muscle imbalances, the body's real efficient. It's not going to waste resources and energy if it doesn't have to. It's going to has its priority, what's most important, keep this person alive. And so these muscles, if they stay shortened for a long period of time, it has that muscle memory, it's just going to eventually do that. And so yeah, so that's real important. So who can describe this right here? It's the upper cross, but what do you understand by the term upper cross? Yeah. Yeah, if we just draw our diagram right here, it's a cross pattern where we get tight and weak and weak. So it's a cross pattern, we call it the upper cross. So as we're forward, doing all those things of our daily living and sitting a lot, head starts to drift forward, shoulders are forward. We end up with weakness because they're being lengthened for long periods of time and they get inhibited and they stay weak. And they get tight up here, so we have that crisscross pattern. So why is that a big deal, or what's the issue with that? Is it very efficient? Is it very health promoting? Is it very helpful? Is it very stable? Not really. So yeah, I work as a chiropractor. I was just talking to a lady the other day, and said she'd always get these headaches right back here, and then she met a trainer who was NASM certified and taught her, how to recognize those things. A lot of people that you don't even know. That happens over time. People don't know that these things are happening. She taught her, pointed out her posture, and then showed her how to exercise those weak muscles, pull those shoulders back, and do those, and then and lengthen and stretch out those tight ones. She said her headaches went away. Or they're just not as bad. She hardly notices them even more, but she'd get them pretty regularly. So that's great. That's the power of what you can do, and that's important to understand. So give me a couple specifics. You guys have learned your muscles. What are some specific muscles that are involved there? What's that? What about them? All right. Yeah, where would you find the rhomboids? Right in the middle back. Yeah, right between the shoulder blades, connecting the shoulder blades to that spinal column. So yeah, that's the real important anchoring muscles. And yeah, they get lengthened. What else? What other muscles around those rhomboids? Traps, the mid and lower traps. Upper traps are going to be part of this deal right here. And good. What about in the front there? What are the... Yep, pectorals coming in like that. Very good. What about a lat? What are your lats doing? Yep, they tend to be overactive. And so how are these going to show up? How are you going to be able to determine those? What are the things you look for in your human movement assessments or whatever? Arms going forward. What about a chest pull? Chest pull, yeah. Are you doing a row? And so what are you looking for? Chin to go forward. What else about the shoulders? Kind of like that. So yeah. So those are things that indicate this process is going on. That's a good way to do that. So what about lower cross? Same idea, same concept, but give me some specifics. What are some key players that you need to know like the back of your hand? Glutes and core, yep. So in our cross pattern, these guys get weak, these guys get weak, tight and tight. So you said core, and describe core. What's a good definition for core? Yeah, so you mean six-pack, right? No, not just your six-pack, right? Crunches? No? No, core has to do with this whole area. We call it, exactly. Yeah, it's a continuous wall of muscle, and you need to know how that works together. So we got a rib cage up here. We got our pelvic girdle right here, but in the middle, not much protection there. It falls on the muscular system or the core. We got those rectus abdominis, then our obliques, external, internal, transverse abdominis, quadratus lumborum through here. All of those, if they work together, create a pressure which will protect that low back and make you more stable. That's core. There we go. So we just talked about that. Postural distortions, for example, the upper cross, lower cross syndrome. Misalignment of one or segments of the human movement system. And we're just going to jump right into this explanation here. So part of our program, we're looking for flexibility, finding those tight ones through our assessments and lengthening that. But the explanation I wanted to get to has to do with this. So how things can evolve into the muscle imbalances. Okay. So who remembers these fun words? You can remember how these go together. So this is what happens and how the imbalance kind of takes place over a long period of time. We're doing this over injuries and micro injuries. But who remembers what a reciprocal inhibition means? Yeah. So neurologically, if I flex the agonist, the antagonist will shut off until I tell it to activate again. Okay? That's just part of movement, even if I'm walking. The guys that are getting flexed get flexed, and the antagonist will be inhibited neurologically. That's what it means, reciprocal inhibition. So if I'm doing this position, these guys are flexed, right? So who's going to be inhibited or shut off? The antagonist, or the opposite. Okay, so we understand how that can happen, right? We're in this position, these guys are flexed, these guys are flexed, these guys are inhibited. Then we move our way down. What does synergistic dominance mean? So what's a synergist? We talked about agonist, antagonist, and then a synergist. What is a synergist and what does it do? A supporting? Good. So if this is my movement, we call it hip flexion. What's the main antagonist there? Or actually, let's use the hip. So extension, what's the main agonist? Or what's the main muscle doing that? The glute max, glute med, right? Okay, so what would be a synergist back there? A hamstring, a piriformis. Yeah, they're smaller muscles, they're helping out but not doing that job. So what does it mean to have synergistic dominance? So if reciprocal inhibition is going on, these guys are flexed, and eventually, just part of my movement pattern, they're flexed, so these guys are inhibited. Then the synergists, when I go to do this movement, the synergists are going to be dominant. Okay, does that make sense? These guys are inhibited, so those synergists have to do most of the work. Is that good or bad? Yeah, because why? They're smaller, they're weaker, they'll fatigue faster, you'll end up with bad movement patterns. And what happens if they fatigue and you're still having to do that motion? What's going to happen? An injury, exactly. They can wear out. You get an overuse injury or something like that. Does that make sense? Reciprocal inhibition leads to the synergistic dominance. And so you're looking for those things in your human movement assessments. You know, those knees go out when you're going down into a squat. That's a piriformis. External rotators are causing that to happen because they're now the dominance. Arthrokinetic dysfunction, what does that mean? Yeah. So break the word down. Arthro means joint, kinetic means movement dysfunction. Joint movement dysfunction, okay? So we talked about those, how that imbalance occurs, right? Tight, weak, synergistic dominance is going to cause abnormal movement patterns. And it's going to put joints in an altered position. Joints have their optimal position where they work correctly, they do their job, what they were designed to do. But if we change that a little bit with a muscle imbalance, that's going to put them in a vulnerable position. You know, they could probably handle it for a while, but if we force it to do certain things over a long period of time, or one big movement with a lot of force, it could be dangerous, right? So arthrokinetic dysfunction, that's what it means. So the joint's not in the right position, not in a healthy position that it can last for a long time. And then we come down here to decreased neuromuscular control. So what does that mean? Pretty straightforward. Decreased neuromuscular control. So going back to NASM, why NASM kind of sets itself apart from other certification bodies and other things like that too, is their understanding of this part right here, neuromuscular, okay? And how important that is to being healthy, being strong, being stable. So yeah, neuromuscular control. Because that's almost confusing for the brain to handle. If we're in this posture, these guys are overactive, inhibiting these guys, and now we're telling it to do certain movements that are hard on it. So it's going to have decreased neuromuscular control. And we talked about the core, right? How the core is more than doing sit-ups, but it has to be coordinated. It has to have good control so that it can make adjustments, make shifts, and deal with stuff like that. Any questions with that? Does that kind of make sense? Spelling it out right there? Good. So when we go back with this understanding of how this evolves, it just kind of flows right into a plan for your client, right? Plug it right into the OPT model, stabilization. And so I wanted to talk about this too. What do I mean by multi-joint, multi-planar? What is your understanding there? First, multi-joint. If I just say that, what do you mean? Or what do you think I'm trying to get you to guess? More than one joint. Okay, but yeah, when it deals with movement and like a workout or some type of exercise, what does multi-joint mean? Okay. Yeah, if you isolate a certain muscle, muscles cross either one or two joints. For the most part, usually one joint. So if I'm just isolating that, it's helpful, but to really stimulate that nervous system, to regain that neuromuscular control, I need to integrate all that. So multi-joint. In the stability realm, most of your exercises or most of your programs are going to involve multi-joints. And why is that? We want to retrain them out of that pattern and make them stable. What about multiplanar? Different planes of motion? Can you name them? Do you remember them? Transverse, sagittal, and coronal. Very good. Or frontal. And so we want exercises that are multi-joint, multiplanar. So, and why is that? Range of motion. And then what about the real world? Do we live in a singular planar world? Even going out to get your groceries, or are you doing this and only working in one plane? Or reaching down to pick up something, are you only working in one plane? No. So if we want to train somebody to be stable, in control, and handle the events of life, or work with athletes where we're training them to handle the events of a sporting activity or something like that, where it's real-time demand and you're never just using one joint or one plane in movement. So we want to train that. Okay. You guys have any questions so far? Pretty straightforward. You guys are doing good.